Welcome back to Fable Talk. This week, special guest Eric. You may remember Eric from our previous episode. He is one of our fabulous playtesters. Today we talk about East Asian mythology. We talk about how we would incorporate East Asian mythology into Fable's End. And again, we talk about Dragon Ball for some reason. Let's go.
But yeah, definitely when it comes, to card games, at least I personally am very much a flavor first person when it comes to card design. Like for me, that's really the perfect Venn diagram where you have, you can look at a card in isolation, totally understand the sort of like miniature story being told within that.
Are you more a fan? So, are the favorite sets of yours from something like Magic would be like more top down, something along the lines of Innistrad or I want to say Theros, although I think Theros is more top down, but I don't know how popular that was for you or anyone
Yeah,
else
it's
really.
Theros is I'm personally mixed on. I think that's one of those I found it was too almost one to one to existing Greek mythology.
Hmm.
Again, that's potentially like contradicting myself, but I guess in respect to games that aren't doing literal tellings, they're doing reimaginings, reinterpretations. Um, I like something where there's more of a distance. I mean, even in respect to the Shahrazad card from Magic's Arabian Nights set. Um, yeah, that's one of those things where it was unique at the time. It was, I think, the first official booster set, I believe, outside of like the original cards. Um, it's they've not returned to it for the reasons of, again, it's too like this is literally just Arabian Nights. This is not Magic IP
Hmm.
really. It's not quite something that only this game can tell. In respect to Fable's End, I mean, the very core of it is taking existing known fables and stories, again, reinterpreting and retelling them in some way. I mean, last time I checked, in the original or in any version of the Little Red Riding Hood story, she doesn't, have this massive sword and go on, a spree. But
Right.
if there is literature in that, I'd love to be pointed in that direction.
As far as I know, I have never seen any uh, official Red Riding Hood story that has that specific concept. That is definitely like a representation of pop culture, I guess. It would be like how pop culture would I want to say pop culture, like nerd culture, has sort of reinvented that tale to it sort of speaks to the times, right? Like, and I think that that's a stories in general are often modified according to the context of the time period that they are being told in, which is a really fascinating concept, like how Red Riding Hood, because you look at Red Riding Hood and everyone's like, yeah, we all know the traditional tale of Red Riding Hood. And it's like, yeah, but if you look at the media surrounding Red Riding Hood in the past 30 years, none of it's traditional. It's all like a take on it. Like, was that movie that came out a while ago, Hoodwinked, right? It has
No,
Red Riding
that was
Hood,
a
but it's
fun
like
one.
yeah, but it's like a twist on the Red Riding Hood tale. It's not a literal. We haven't done a movie where it's just a literal like one to one Red Riding Hood as represented in the original tale. One, probably because it's not a movie length worthy story. It's probably like 30 minutes at the most. And two, because it doesn't really speak to the aesthetics of our time where we're like, well, we already know that story. Like it doesn't have the same kind of drama or conflict or aesthetics that we like in our stories now, particularly if they're medieval or fantasy in nature. Um, but it is really interesting how that all how the context of any given story can or retelling of that story, even either it be through movies or media or through games, can really like change our understanding or even our taste for that story. We can like a story more or less depending on how we experience it through different media.
I mean, yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think when it comes to like archetypical stories, archetypical characters, um, I mean, the reason to retell it at all when the original exists is to give it some sort of like new spin or edge or observe it from a new angle. Because otherwise, I would just direct you back to. I mean, in respect to Red Riding Hood, is she a My Brother's Grimm telling? I'm not quite sure.
I don't remember, actually. I can't off the top of my head remember if that's a Grimm. I think it is a Grimm fairy tale. I feel pretty confident about that.
I guess ultimately, if
But
you want to get back to the roots, you got to find, some like 200-year-old Nona somewhere in like the Baltic countryside and ask her to tell you the story. That's going to
yeah.
be closer to authentic, but we don't all have access to that. I don't
Well,
personally.
what we do know is that the original version of that story has been uh, sanitized pretty heavily over the past few years. Even what we consider to be the more pure version of the story that's not been filtered through pop culture is not the original story. The original
Yeah, that
story
makes
has
sense.
some details in it that are like, that's kind of gross.
It's
That
one
I
of
will
those things
not
where
I'm not going to go into them here, but if anyone is curious, they can go look at the original telling of the story. There's a specific thing that happens when the wolf and Red Riding Hood, or when the wolf is impersonating the grandma in bed, and Red Riding Hood is there, and I'll just leave it at that.
But
Um,
yeah, it's one of those things where, at the time in which this was originally being told, no disrespect to our ancestors, but they were gross times. You know,
yeah.
the stories were, I think, in respect to the again, the Into the Woods type stories, of which Into the Woods is, directly referencing. They were cautionary tales. Don't go into the woods. They're dangerous. Bad things will happen.
Oh,
Nowadays, that's less the concern. But these characters still persist, and we have to see, what is it, what relevance do they have with our current, or at least, a revised or updated cultural lens.
right, right, and even something like Hansel and Gretel in one, at least in my understanding of the original source material, the reason why they're in the woods in the first place is not because they get lost. It's because their parents abandoned them because they can't feed them anymore. And this practice, which is horrible, right? This is like awful practice. It doesn't really make for a good children's story to say these children are lost in the woods and by themselves because their parents were like, we do not have enough food to feed you anymore, and we would rather keep the food for ourselves, so we're just going to abandon you in the forest, and that's the end of that.
Anyway, good night. You
Yeah,
know?
anyway, later, and then they just run away.
Yeah.
So obviously, like that's a totally different time period, is different values, different and it's interesting too, because it's not like that's uh, a non-fictional story, right? Like, it's obviously fiction, it's obviously made up, so it probably speaks to some of the hardships of the time and on the fears of the time, but may or may not be representative of actual behavior, right? Because, like, well, there's a witch in that story, and like witches aren't real, so you know, there's all sorts of it's difficult to um it's like it's easy to say like, wow, that's awful, and like what was wrong with people back then, but it's also like, yeah, but it's also just a story. It doesn't necessarily represent fact or history.
Which is to say, we distilled that harrowing historical experience down to a playing card.
Yeah, right, exactly. And now they fight each other, and that's much better. We prefer that. We prefer them to commit violence on one another. Um, anyway, but on to something more positive. Um, I was going to ask you a question in regards to. I know we talked a little bit about. I think we talked about Journey of the West last time, and we were kind of getting. We started to get in on that a little bit. Um,
Yes, the Goku of it all,
the
or
Goku, yes,
more
the,
accurately,
the
the Sun Wukong of it all.
yep. Um, and I guess my question for you was, I know we talked about what you thought would be most exciting for the game, and you seemed to be most excited about Fable's End exploring um, something like Journey to the West or Asian mythology. Is there another tale or a specific character that you would love to see as a card, or would you want to kind of give a maybe like a little bit more information for those of our listeners that aren't super familiar with this mythology or familiar with something like Journey to the West? Do you want to give them like a primer on that?
Yeah, I can do a quick overview. Again, to be fair, it's one of those ancient classical tales where, again, the full breadth of it is very long, and even in translations to modern English will still sound very archaic. If you ever try to read Beowulf or something, which is in like Proto English, you'll also
Right.
find some hiccups along the way.
Hmm.
Um, I will say, unironically, watching and or reading the original Dragon Ball does cover a lot of the events of the Journey to the West tale. But
Oh, thank God I don't have
um,
to read. Oh, whew. I can just watch cartoons.
yeah, but that stuff is old.
Wait, are the
Uh,
Dragon Balls, is that a thing that's in Journey to the West? Is there like an analog to that? Or is the Dragon Ball like a whole different idea that Akira Toriyama made up?
I would say the Dragon Balls are the distinct marking of Toriyama's work.
Okay.
I don't believe there's a one-to-one respect to the original story. Basis of Journey to the West is that there is like, I think it does start with Sun Wukong. Um, this mischievous little twerp. Um, and again, everything I say is going to allude to Goku at some point, who at this point is probably more popular, at least in the West, because he journeyed there. But Sun Wukong is this magical monkey, literally born. Okay, this is the thing with old Chinese mythology. There's a lot of these very grand details where like he was born on top of a mountain that I believe was struck by lightning and emerged as beautiful golden resplendent monkey boy. He can speak because it's a story. Um, the early bit of it is actually him being um again just a real ass. He goes over the place fighting various members of like the older Chinese like Buddhist pantheon.
Hmm.
He's going to like the gardens of lesser gods and just like stealing from them or like eating their food. Um, he eventually runs into like literally like the Buddha with a capital B, like ostensibly like the all powerful being. Um, and true to the original story, he ends up in Buddha's palm. I don't believe he's aware it's in his palm initially. Um, just fully pees on him, shows a lot of disrespect. Buddha's not particularly happy about that, as one might imagine. Basically casts our monkey boy down from the heavens, pins him under a rock for, I imagine, I don't know, a couple hundred, couple thousand years. Time's very fluid in these things. Um, Eventually, a Buddhist monk working his way to the path of enlightenment, whose name I unfortunately forget at this time, he is tasked with making this big journey across like the continent to the west. And he basically has to put a team together. Literally has to put a crew together. Starts with Wukong because despite his terrible attitude, is known for his various feats of strength and agility and what have you. Um, so it becomes a little sort of like RPG party.
Amazing.
They're going across the land. They're picking up allies along the way. Getting a whole squad of boys together. Um, you'll come across figures such as I always butcher the pronunciations because I don't really have my Mandarin straight. But there's the pig man. It's like Jules Bagier or something like that. Um, I apologize if anybody does know how badly I'm saying that. He is from Dragon Ball, like Oolong, the pig man.
Oh, right, 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 right. Yep, yep. You're talking about.
Yeah, they encounter him. He's like the classic image of a pig. I mean, literally like boorish, but like Boor. You
Hmm.
know, gluttonous, not the smartest guy, but still pretty strong. Um, they come across like a sort of like river spirit, like aquatic dragon man. He joins them. Um, and literally, as far as I've read in the story, it's like there's a graphic novel adaptation that came out recently, and over two volumes, it probably tells maybe not even 10% of the whole thing, which just goes to show like how vast the length of the story actually is. All this to say, we're going to try to bring it back. All this to say, that's just one story, which itself has many sub stories, a whole litany of characters. that's not in respect to other things like various mythological creatures that are from, in this case, Chinese mythology, but also looking at greater East Asian mythology. There's the whole idea of like yokai in Japan,
Hmm.
which is like a whole other thing. I think it ultimately comes down to a mixture of again, I like you know these big character rich stories, but also I'm just like a fan of Pokemon and sort of like bestiaries and monsters, and knowing that like every culture has some form of monster, every culture has some form of dragon, which is a fascinating thing. Um, just seeing ways and all those characters and creatures exist, kind of populate the world, bring their unique spin on things. Uh, there's more than one way to skin a dragon, or more than one way to skin a unicorn. Don't quote me on that if you find something, but
I'm going to quote you on everything, just so that we're clear.
that's not great. That's going to be an
I'm gonna make a website and it's gonna have all of your quotes on it, and I'm just gonna constantly be posting it everywhere I go on the internet and be like,
yeah.
doesn't matter what I'm commenting on. I'd be like, hey, you should check out this guy Eric. He said this thing. Here's the website.
It's just Twitter for me.
It's Twitter for you, yes. Um,
Oh gosh. I might have gotten away from our original question, but I guess what I'm saying is there's a lot out there.
yeah, it sounds incredibly dense. And I'll admit my knowledge of Journey to the West is pretty shallow. It's pretty superficial. And I was like, oh, I know Goku, and that's kind of it. And it's been recommended to me as a place of source material by like multiple people, including yourself. Um, and honestly, hearing about it, I'm like, this feels like this could be multiple sets. I think there's enough in here for maybe like 50 to 100 cards in Fable's End, which would be really
Yeah,
fun.
it's one of those things where, like, frankly, again, it could be, in many ways, is an IP unto itself.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Like,
it could be. And also, while you were saying it, I was like, well, like it's kind of like an RPG, and I was like, well, has there been an RPG about this? Because I bet it would be great. It would make an amazing RPG. Like if you just did Journey to the West as an RPG. But I swear that's probably something, right? Somebody's done that. Somebody had to have done that.
yeah, I mean, unironically, there are original Dragon Ball based video games, but I mean, Black Myth Wukong just came out, and it's like a Dark Souls-esque game taking
Mhm.
place throughout Journey to the West, which I've not played yet, and I've been desperately meaning to. But it is hard when you have your 9 to 5 throughout the week.
Yeah, I know that. Hey, listen, I can relate to that.
Hey,
Very,
hey,
very,
been around the
very,
block a couple times.
yeah.
I just want
Um,
to be Monkey Man with big stick. Is that so much to ask?
no, not at all. Actually, in Fable's End, that's not a lot to ask at all. It's very,
Fantastic.
very possible.
I think it's the card
Um,
name. It's Monkey Man with big stick.
Monkey Man with big stick,
Yeah.
monkey stick.
Mm,
That probably doesn't sound great.
yeah. Don't quote me on that. Although it is on the website.
That will still be on the website, and even though I said it, we'll attribute it to you, so I
Yeah, of
can.
course.
Um, well, I think it sounds like something like Journey to the West would probably be the way I imagine it in Fable's End would probably be like every kingdom would get a Journey to the West themed expansion. So you'd have 6 altogether.
Now, that'd be super
Um,
fun.
I think it would be really fun. I think just because there's enough, I think there's probably enough content in there to where you could kind of like have the whole, it could be like a cycle. It would be like Journey to the West block, so to speak, to borrow a term for Magic. That could be, I think that would be how we would make that work.
That means I gotta
for
read
other-
more. Oh no.
Yeah, I know. Well, both of us. I have to really look into it and read it. But it just from the way you're describing it, I'm like, okay, I can already see like, I think I visualize like 8 cards in there. There's even and there was like definite visual stuff that stood out that was so fantastic, like the lightning bolt hitting the top of the mountain, and then the the monkey being born on top of the mountain. It's like that's amazing. That's great. That's such great fodder for art direction and for card design too.
Yeah,
Um,
there's definitely a lot of, I mean, even just in the early bits that I'm to understand, a lot of fun bits. If you remember Goku and his power pole from the manga slash show,
mhm.
that is like some Wukong's signature weapon is this again this like large sort of staff he can adjust to like any given size. What it literally was a massive pillar from like a god's either like castle or temple. He just ripped the thing off. It
That's
follows
amazing.
um it follows Marvel Ant-Man rules where it maintains the same mass regardless of size.
Right. Right.
And so it's just incredibly dense thing. He can literally shrink down to the size of like a toothpick and like hide in his ear.
Weird. So, oh, it's so fun. That's so fun. I
Yeah.
imagine a card where like you're just ripping a pillar off of it. Like the artwork is just ripping the pillar off the temple, and then the effect is like dropping plus 1,000 counters on a unit.
Yeah, a lot of super solid visuals. Apparently he
Yeah.
can turn into a bunch of different animal forms. He's very powerful. I don't know where he
Yeah.
stacks up against like Superman in a fight, but the internet knows.
The internet knows.
And
There's
they've been
definitely
talking
some
about it.
YouTube video on there that's like Superman versus Son Goku.
Yeah.
Is it no? Is it Son Goku or is it Wukong? Which there's those are two separate characters, right?
It's actually a difference between original Chinese and then Japanese.
I see. Okay, okay, okay. Gotcha.
Character is Sun Wukong in Chinese, and then Japan goes to Son Goku.
Okay, got it. Um, very, very cool. Now, what else? Are there other characters or other stories that you want to see outside of, or specifics within that get you really excited? Like specifics within Journey to the West, or characters or stories outside of Journey to the West that are like East Asian in origin?
Could definitely do a real deep dive on like yokai, which is something I've looked into a lot. I brought
That's
it up a
good.
little bit earlier.
Yokai was something that was on my list of possible expansions. I
Yeah.
had a whole like um so that's I feel again you and I often like I feel like we converge. We'll like individually have these ideas for expansions and then it's like you will share and I will share and be like, oh, we've already thought of this together. So that's a good sign. If other people are thinking about it, it's usually a good sign.
Yeah, yokai are one of those things where each individual one is already like such a contained story.
Hmm.
I get very much. I mean, they are. I forget the direct translation, but basically, like weird spirits. Weird in the sense that they're literally like esoteric, seemingly for the sake of being it. I don't think they relate to a lot of cautionary tales. There's one where it's just like it's an umbrella with a mouth, an eyeball, and a leg with a sandal, and he hops around. And he's just out there in the world. I don't think that's telling me not to like, not to steal or something. But
Right, right, right. I mean, my understanding of a lot of this is that it's they're older, they're pretty old stories. They're kind of there's just sort of like the it's hard to explain. In they're almost like urban legend level stories, right? Like it would be something along the lines of like Bigfoot, although that's not necessarily urban legend, but you know what I mean. It's
no, but yeah, there are a version of folk tales.
yeah, it's like a folk tale, but it's also like a like oh, there's this thing that if you stay out late enough at night and it's March and you're close to a swamp, you might see this thing. And they're really like you're saying, like it's not like it's not rooted in some sort of fable or narrative about that's a commentary on anything or a cautionary tale. It's just like, oh, this is a an idea that someone generated a long time ago, and that idea has persisted. Like, oh, the reason why the it gets cold at night is because of this like ghost that comes and like breathes on you, right? And you're like, oh my God, that's horrible. That's terrifying. And they're like, yeah, it is. And then that's the end of it.
Yep.
There's no substance beyond that. It's just like, isn't that terrifying? And you're like, yes. And they're like, cool. Well, I got to go to
Yes.
work. And you're like, what?
Yeah. Why'd you tell me that? Okay. Good night. What?
And yokai are like particularly, oh man, they're so fun. It's such a um, fun genre of like creatures because they're really, really weird. Some of them are
Yeah.
really weird.
I
Like
find
you're
them.
saying, umbrella.
Yeah, I find them so fascinating because, like, without any real in between, they perfectly oscillate between again Umbrella with Face, and then if anyone's familiar with like The Grudge or The Ring, or the
Hmm.
original titles like Ju-on, or it is just Ringen to Ringu. Um, those are both the same type of spirit called an onryo. And those are an onryo is an angry ghost, basically, someone with unfinished business. The key distinction between that as Japanese spirit and our Western familiarity with ghosts or banshees, things of that nature, is an Onryo is just a manifestation of negative energy, and there's no way to stop that force. Like an Onryo shows up and it simply wreaks havoc and kills people, and that's it. There's no appeasing it. There's no, giving it proper resting. It's just out there. And that kind of sucks to be in the receiving end, but it is fascinating as an idea.
Sure. And even as it would translate to a Fable's End card, that would be, I mean, that translates very cleanly because it doesn't have to be represented in any specific way. Like there's no, um, based on what you've described here, and I know that there's more to it than just that. There's specific physical qualities that each of these yokai have. Um, in the hair being one of them. Like I think the hair for an Onryo is like part of the descriptor, right? Am I getting that wrong? Like that there is, or
I mean,
there's
I
at
definitely,
least one yokai that has like a very specific thing with how like it has like long mangy hair, and then there's a face like on the back of the head or something like that. I might be
yes.
multiple.
So yeah,
Uh,
that is a different yokai.
yeah, we
The
will get
names
someone
escape.
on. We will have somebody on this podcast at some point who is very well versed in this and that can educate me and everyone else on like what specific yokai
Yeah, I was like,
are
the name
what.
of that one's escaping me, but it is the Pokemon Mawile is based on that.
Okay. Yeah.
Pokemon does a lot of
Well,
yokai things because it's a Japanese game with 1,000 monsters in it. So
yeah, and also it's interesting once you start learning more about yokai how they start appearing. You start seeing them in games like the particularly the umbrella thing. It's like that I've definitely seen in video games, and it's either a take on that or it's a direct representation of that specific yokai. But it's very again, we're kind of in the same topic of like how a story presents itself in media and how it can be presented in games and how it can kind of like help us to understand it better, or it can be a reflection of the context of the culture. Um, but yeah, I feel like yokai would be another really fertile ground for Fable's End cards because there are like there's like hundreds of them, right? There's like
yeah, I think literally just hundreds.
hundreds, yeah, and they're all very specific too. It's like this is the yokai that lives in your shoe when it's raining outside. There's stuff like that. Um, and again, it's so rich. It's like such rich visuals for what we want to do with the game, and it's also just like, hey, a lot of people don't know about this stuff. Like it's great to. I know we discussed this a little bit earlier for like representation purposes to say like there's so many cool things in all cultures in all stories, and I don't think that there's one superior um, story that is the apex of human narrative or the apex of like human mythology. Like, oh well, Greek mythology is the best. It's like actually they're all really fun. They all have some cool thing going on.
Well, Stephen, hold on. I believe that story is called Paddington 2 and it has a
That
certified 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. Like
oh
Paddington
boy.
2 and Citizen Kane are indisputably. Actually, I think Paddington does outrank it nowadays.
I think so. I think that's right. I think Citizen Kane finally got knocked down by Paddington 2. What is it? Is it Lost in Peru? Is that the
No, that's the third. That one's coming. It's funny.
Oh,
I've
that's
not
the
watched these
third
yet,
one.
and I do owe it to myself because it is 100%. And Rotten Tomatoes is fairly critical as a website.
Yeah, but also I have to put in my 2 cents here about Rotten Tomatoes. Rotten Tomatoes is also like, well, no one reviewed this movie except this one person on Reddit, so it's got 100% rating, and you're like, wait a minute,
No, but not Paddington. That's got millions of
that's
probably not millions,
that's legitimate. That earned
lots of
that
reviews.
100%. Yeah, and then audience score is like 12%.
Here's the thing:
Um,
Paddington is definitely not public domain.
no, definitely not. No, we will.
Curiously, Winnie the Pooh is now. That's like been a whole thing in the past like year and a half.
Yeah, yeah, Winnie the Pooh. I believe I don't know why I said Pooh that. I said Pooh like Pooh. I don't know why I said it that way. But Peter Pan, I believe, has also recently been in the public domain, or it was like within the past 10 years it entered public domain.
It's
Mickey
really
Mouse
recent.
apparently is now public domain, but that one is like that's a whole can of worms because I think that
You don't touch the mouse. You're gonna get
you
this
don't touch the
episode
mouse.
taken down.
In fact, I might even have to go back and edit out the phrase Mickey Mouse because I might get sued by Disney for just
That's,
mentioning him.
yeah, well, Steamboat Willie, I think, is public domain.
Steamboat Willie.
It,
Oh, that's okay. I'm sorry. Steamboat
I
Willie
think
is public domain.
a
That's what I meant.
legally distinct character, and I will not.
Yeah.
I will continue this thread as a courtesy.
We actually, full disclosure, we actually, Kwame and I were discussing like, oh, Steamboat Willie, maybe we could do a Steamboat Willie thing. And I was like, I don't think we want to even try with Disney. If we were to do something like that, we could do something like a old timey cartoon and then kind of make a character that looks a little bit like Steamboat Willie Mickey Mouse. But even then, I'm like so nervous to touch any big corporation that that has hundreds of lawyers and billions of dollars. I just don't even want to go near that.
Yeah, we got other stuff to explore. We got, Umbrella Face Shoe Man.
Yeah, there you go. There. Yeah, that's what's wrong with that.
Again, also, I
Um,
presume the name of that feature card. Just
uh,
very to the
um,
point, very blunt.
yeah, I think that's right. Umbrella Face Shoe Man.
Mhm.
Um,
Rolls off the tongue.
rolls off the tongue. Yeah, that's how everybody knows it. Everyone's gonna remember that. Um, well, we're hitting like around 30 minutes, but I don't know if you want to keep talking this direction, or we can shift topics, or if you want to stop now, or we could split this into two parts. It's totally up to you. However you want to move forward.
I say let's keep it going. I mean, if it
Okay.
becomes a two-parter, it does. If you
Yeah, I'm fine
upload
with a
a
two-parter.
disturbing 2 hour long episode on YouTube, it'll throttle your bandwidth, but it's possible.
Can we talk a little bit about, and we'll just keep these things in mind and talk a little bit about Fable's End as a game? Is that possible?
Yeah, I think we could do that.
Okay. Um, is there how trying to think like how I want to ask this question without giving away too much. Um, hmm.
Tricky
You know
stuff.
what? I lost the question I wanted to ask you, but
We'll have to keep to our core four for
I know we have to keep to the core four for now, which
well,
is a little bit. It's not frustrating. It's just like, oh man, we want to talk. We want to be able to talk about all six of them right now, and kind of like contextualize it all. And especially, I think one thing I would like to do with this podcast is like take characters and then just run the exercise of like where do they fit in a kingdom.
mhm.
Um, maybe we could do that. Maybe we could do that. Where do you
How
think
fun.
uh Son Goku or Wukong would go? Which kingdom do you think he belongs in?
I had as you can imagine, I've given that whole cast of characters some decent thought. Um, and I feel like he fits best into Scorpion.
Okay.
And there's a mix bit there. There's again, as a sort of derivative from Scorpion starting in Arabian Nights, it's still I literally don't know geographically where, and I'm putting this in heavy air quotes, like Middle East lands, but Asia in some parts, like Asia and
Mhm.
Europe in some parts. And so moving that part of the world, again, you move X miles to the right, you eventually get to mainland China. And so it has that sort of it's tangential, but pulling from, that realm of storytelling. Um, and then also as far as mechanics go, he's a very rambunctious character. He literally, you know, steals a bunch and vandalizes, and I think, with existing effects of like hand disruption or like resource denial that the core Scorpion cards run, I think there's something in there. Also, the fact that it is, at least by default, the most aggressive of the four factions.
Hmm. And he is
Um,
is he kind of a character who's just like I'm gonna head, straight in without thinking, or is he more of a like clever trickster? Like what's the
I feel like the way the stories go, he's definitely clever. He's not, he's not daft, but it's one of those things where he dives in head first because he knows he's functionally immortal.
right? Okay,
So it's like he comes up with little like bits of deceit, but also he almost can't face consequences.
I could see him having a like a lost trigger, like where you draw a card when he dies. That could be
Yeah,
an ability. I'm not sure if that's the specific right ability, but if it's sort of like it you because then you want to play him and throw him into reckless situations, right? Like that would be the sort of the way that you would psychologically process his character as you play the game would be like, oh, he works best if he's reckless, right? Like, I'm going to throw him in your hand. And if I get something, great. If I don't get something, I'm going to draw a card. That's awesome either way, right?
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if that's actually that's viable. It could be a total disaster, but
But yeah,
and then
right.
I
You know,
imagine
just
him
talking
being
through the process.
right. He could be like a rank 3, maybe like rank 4, because he's yet immortal, but not like God level, right? He's not coming in and he's not like the strongest thing that is in any given situation.
Funnily enough, I think he's right below. I put him at a rank 4 right now.
You think he's a rank 4? Okay. So we put him in a rank 4. There's some ability that draws you a card with him. We don't know what that is.
Yeah, he
If he's
gets
rank,
some sort of spoils to whatever he's doing, I'm sure.
yeah, the draw card on being on Lost is it's not as good at a rank 4 because his power is going to be higher, so it's just not going to die as much. But it's still good because it also makes him a target. It kind of like prevents people from attacking him. Like it's weird how the psychology of like putting it in different ranks at different power levels changes the way he's good or the way that a card works in Fable's End. It's like one of the weirdest things about design is that you can take the exact same ability and like put it one level above what it's at, and it completely changes the context of how that card works. So for a rank 3, if he's like 4,000 power or 5,000 power, the likelihood of him dying is like decent. At a 7,000 power rank 4, he's a little harder. He's much harder to kill, so that he's not going to get that effect off very often. But it's a deterrent for people to try and kill him. Like if he's out on the front line and he drew a car on a loss, then people are like, I really want to get those 3 skulls in there, but I don't want my opponent to draw a card. So there's a little bit more hesitation. So that can play into his like immortality in a different way, right? Like,
Oh yeah, and to touch on that, I've always found that in Fable's End design, either when playing the game or trying to like propose new unit ideas as we are now, it is very much a game of small margins.
mhm.
Yeah, like moving any number, literally one tick, either like 1,000 power or a rank in this direction or this direction. Yeah, fully changes the card. It fully changes how it interacts with, again, cards of that rank or cards with similar rush stats.
Yeah,
So all
totally.
these tiny little tinkering pieces you have to, you know, keep in mind, or like reassess and readjust, farther down the pipeline.
Yeah, and it's also advantage seal makes a big difference too, because that is another incremental step where you have to consider. Now, again, as I've explained, for people who aren't in our Discord, I've kind of run through how our advantage seals are representative of a different like state of mind of a particular unit, or the way that I see it is it's the way they solve a conflict. So between our 3 seals, we have rock paper sword. Rock, the unit is resolving a conflict through instinct or through like brute force. Paper would be through knowledge, and sword is through skill. So, and these are representative of the character in the state that the card represents them as. So, a character doesn't always have, they're not always a sword or they're not always paper. They could be a rock if their attitude changes or their situation changes. Um, so we try to design them, units. Like my kind of initial impression would be that this card would be a rock, but there's also an argument to be made for the other two, and it kind of depends on like how we want to frame what this character is in the game, and then also like we have to consider all the matchups that it might run into. Like, oh, if it's paper in this meta, then it's really strong. But if it's sword in this meta, then it like is victim to this card, and this card, right? Um, so all that to say, like the margins that we move when we move things incrementally up one or one up or one down, the advantage seal also plays a huge role in that. And as much as we want that advantage seal to be more of an intuitive thing, it also can be a tool to like balance a card or to make them better than they would normally be.
I will say that kind of does invoke like a fun idea. I don't think one we've explored in card design yet necessarily, um, where this this potential this ethereal Wukong card could potentially like change his advantage field or something.
Oh, that's totally possible. Yeah, that's also something we haven't fully explored in future designs yet. Although that is something that's definitely in the pipeline. But I wonder, is that like, does that speak to his character? Is he somebody who can kind of like make a shift on the fly and kind of say
So I was
like,
gonna say on a flavor level, he does, as far as like his actual list of powers, have a bunch of different like animal transformations he could just do
right,
with like
right.
snap of his fingers. Um, and I do like the idea of again this silly brash monkey man jumping into a fight, realizing, well, that didn't go how I thought it was going to go, but then having the wit to sort of quickly pivot in that way.
Hmm.
I kind of like
So
this sort of like wild card aspect to him, both in the sense of it's literally risky, but also having different outcomes depending on different scenarios.
do you think he's more unpredictable in that way, or do you think it's more something you would be able to control? I guess it would be something you can control because he can at will change his shape, right?
Yeah, I think so. Again,
Okay,
maybe
so
maybe
then
that's a cost of ooh, like discard a unit, take its seal, maybe.
let me take it. All right, I'm gonna take a crack at this. Ready? Okay, here we go. Rank 4, Scorpion card, Rock, Advantage Seal. I would say either 3 embers or 4. 3 if he's blue embers, if he's a wildfire, because he's a magical entity. So wildfire is usually like reserved for magical things, but not always. Um, but generally, like if a unit has like a magical quality about them, then we usually give them blue embers. I would say 6 or 7,000 power, depending on how strong his abilities are. He has 2 abilities. One would be if he's lost, then he draws you a card. And the other ability would be either unbury one, change the advantage seal of this unit until the end of turn, or it would be something like on attack, you could mill the top card of your deck, and then whatever that advantage seal is, that's what he becomes. Or you could choose between the two. Something like that.
And we print it. There you go.
Done. Next. Let's go.
Done. He doesn't
We
have any
got
rush
this.
tests. That's
Don't
fine.
even
That's
need to
cool.
test it.
But
It's
it's done.
perfectly balanced.
Yep.
I could see the argument for a like mill of the top card or even a discard, but discard is pretty hefty. That's like you're almost better off, especially if like it's the reason why you would want the advantage seal is because you want him to take out something bigger. But
Mhm.
like you're already going to draw a card if he loses, so the like opportunity cost of discarding a card feels like a lot of um it feels like a pretty heavy cost to pay for something that's probably not going to net you very much advantage. Um
Yeah, that mill version does sound more fair in that regard. It's also again a fun bit of randomness.
Yeah. It would be, and it plays into other strategies too, because if he's Scorpion, you could play a Scorpion Wolf deck. Now you've like fuel for your sideline to pull things from your sideline or whatever.
That or
Um,
deliberately, or I guess you doing Scorpion Crack and deliberately stack what that top card is.
yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, 100%. And there are ways to do that in future cards that we will not spoil here, but there will be ways to like stack that card onto your deck and kind of manipulate that. So that could be an interesting little combo piece there. Um, it seems to me like, and this is also another thing about Fable's End that's really important about Fable's End design is that like you can't go too crazy with the card effects because as powerful as this character is in universe, you probably want to limit him to 2 abilities. 3 it would be if you made this card like you'd start adding skulls to his skull value. Instead of being if he's a rank 4, he would be a 3 skull. But if you wanted to add more stuff to him, then you'd probably have to bump up his skull value because he's just too strong. Because you want to be able to like he's at parity with other rank 4s in terms of like overall power level, even if they don't match up correctly. Like if another rank 4 can just come in and dominate, or vice versa. You also want to make sure that those abilities are like the thing that factors into the overall power level of the card, not just the combat ability. So I would probably leave him there. I don't know if I'd add anything else, and then it's just refining those abilities. Um,
I mean, yeah,
and
it's a mixture of. No, sorry. But yeah, it's a mixture of keeping him in comparison and conversation with existing units of the same rank, and then also just as far as the actual system works. For the most part, units don't stick around terribly long. It's usually some have repeatable, activated abilities or really good static abilities, but it's mostly you get your single invasion, you get your single block, and then they clear out and you draw the next ones.
Yeah. Yep. For the most part.
That's why,
Now,
and that's why you get up to 5 copies.
yep. And that also introduces in another idea too, where you can have cards that retire to the top of your deck rather than to your sideline. That is another way to. It's just more design space for us, and like a card like
That's spicy. Yep.
yeah, and that could work for something like Wukong too, because if he's quote unquote immortal, I mean that's more of like this card is just really persistent and wants and is a pest, and they're just like annoying. Um, so I'm
Not untrue to how he's portrayed.
yeah, right. I mean that could fit his character as well, so that could be another option instead of like when he dies you draw a card. It's more like when he retires, he goes to the top of your deck. Because drawing a card during your retirement is like meaningless. Because during your draw step, you'll draw all those
Yeah.
cards anyway. Retirement happens before your draw step, so it effectively has no function other than like being able to reuse that card, which may be fine, right? There is a world in which that type of ability of like retiring back to your hand could also be good, but retiring to the top of your deck is also just like another way to do that, and it plays into other card effects too, because there are cards that like affect the top of your deck, or that might during your draw step you might be able to look at the top card of your deck and sink it or whatever. I don't know. I mean, there's just more possible. It's kind of like the more you move things in and out of zones, the more you're enabling opportunities for the other kingdoms to kind of like flex their muscles. And that's, I think, generally speaking, for design, that's what we want to do. Is you want to give opportunities for other kingdoms to come in and be like, "Hey, I heard you discarded a card. Uh, I can help you with that." Or like, "I
Wolf,
heard
it's
you
not what it
sent
looks
something to the
like.
losses." Raven says, slyly, like, "I have some cards that can get that back from the losses if you're interested." And then Scorpion's like, "Oh, go on," and then they form an alliance, and then
Is you reopening the dating sim?
yeah, and then right. Oh, I got to get back on that. I'm sorry. Um, I will return to the dating sim. It will come back. I have to like sit down and actually do it.
But yeah, part of the
But
exercise we're doing now is you take a character like this who is so grand and who has a story that is very long, and the challenge is finding a way to the best of our ability distilling that down to something that alludes to his origins, but ultimately creates like you know a pithy. We love throwing out this word like grokkable game piece.
yeah, right. And I think that's the key that for designing. I mean, honestly, any game successfully. It's mostly important here because so much of the goal of so many designs in Fable's End is for that resonance between source material and mechanic. Like it should feel like you're playing this character, right? It should, and we've kind of, we have these like philosophical, mechanical analogs to specific ideas in different kingdoms. Currently, Wolf, like the sideline, to me, the analogy for that would be like you're lost. So if you're in the sideline, you're like in the woods. Um, so when we flavor cards or pulling things from the sideline, it's like recovering them from being lost or going and finding them. They're like in the wood. They've disappeared into the woods, and if you want to go, you can go into the woods and get them. So cards that have um, things that go and grab, like Search Party, for example, in the core set, it's like we're gonna go look for this unit, and we do it by having other units that are already on the front line going and looking for them, and then going and rescuing them or whatever.
And on the flip side of that coin, Witch's Oven is someone got lost and it did not go well.
Exactly right. They will never be seen again because now they have been eaten. Um, and yeah, so for this, I mean these exercises are really fun because it kind of one, it shows that the Fables End system is really flexible for how it can represent the character. There's kind of infinite. There's so many like numbers to push around and so many different ideas, and there are keywords that we didn't even talk about. There are new keywords that we could add to this card as well. I have one specifically in my mind that I think would work really, really well for this card. Although the more we add to that, the more he starts coming. He becomes something other than a unit that I won't talk about right now. Um, but yeah,
I mean, there's a favorite mechanic, single attack.
single attack.
It's like twin attack, but half as much.
But you can only do it once, right? Yeah, it's really clean. It's very efficient.
Yeah, when you attack, that's it, and that's what the card
Super
says.
grockable. It's like the most grockable of all abilities. Single attack.
In a way,
Uh,
most cards actually have it, but it's not made apparent up front.
right, right. It's so intuitive that we don't even need to label it on the cards.
It's actually ingrained into the cards if you hold it up under a microscope.
Yeah. There's a watermark if you hold it in black light, it'll show it. Um, I think well, I think we should do this for one more card and then see where that lands us with time, because I think this exercise is really fun. Um, can you think of
I mean,
another like character that you would want to see in the game? And like, I know there was one you referenced somebody a while ago in our playtest chat. It was a character from East Asian mythology. I don't think it was a Journey to the West character, although it could be. Um, or
oh,
maybe
just
it
like
was.
one of the monster bestiary picks.
I think so. Was it?
I think so. It's if we're talking about the same thing, it is frankly on the front of my mind in regular human conversation, which is very weird for people to find out what I'm thinking about. Um, it's always an entire non sequitur to trying to figure out lunch plans. There is a creature known as a Zhangshi or Zhangshi,
Hmm.
the Chinese hopping vampire, as it's colloquially known. Um, okay, we say vampire because that's like the closest point of comparison to like universal concepts that we have.
Do you think it would
Um,
be appropriate for us to type it as a vampire, like to have it as a vampire type?
yeah, I think that works out fine. In the same way that you look at, you ever watch the either movie or show, What We Do in the Shadows?
No, you've referenced it a lot, and it's something I know I would enjoy. I just haven't gotten around to it.
So small spoilers, not really spoilers, but with the TV show adaptation, again, it's a mockumentary about vampires in present day, living as roommates, very silly stuff. But in the TV show, one of the characters is known as an energy vampire,
Okay, you've mentioned this before. I kind of knew that's where you were going with this.
which
Yep.
is yeah, which and this will relate one to one back to this Junction figure, but um, this character, Colin Robinson, works in a corporate setting and is literally so draining on conversations and social interactions that he gets power the same way a regular vampire would drain the blood out of a person.
Amazing.
Just very silly and very funny. Um, and to that effect, again, he's not going to be the vampire you find from any sort of gothic literature, but the connective thread being vampires are, again, these sort of like, often interpreted like malicious creatures or just creatures that have to sustain their life force by taking it for something else.
Hmm.
You could take away the fangs and turning to bats and all that. Like I find like distilled down to its very core is that idea. And so again, the reason we call it the hopping vampire is that it drains like your chi or your life force. Again, through sort of magical means. I imagine this card would be like a magic user. And the hopping part is because these creatures are literally reanimated corpses. So in that sense, similar to the undead nature of most Western vampires. They hop because they literally have rigor mortis.
Oh my God.
And
Okay.
so they're just these rigid figures with their arms outstretched, sort of like zombie style. And they can't bend their limbs. So in order to travel, they either levitate or just hop on their toes.
Amazing.
I think the levitating visual is more scary than someone, pogo sticking their way towards you. But if they do that, maliciously, you do anything maliciously, it's probably pretty scary.
I think there's always lighting and context that can make things that seem totally goofy and non-serious really menacing and threatening.
Yeah.
I think
I think
I,
you can do
I
the
wouldn't
inverse too.
worry. The hopping thing and like the stiff limbs is so unnatural looking that I think if it's presented in the right way, it does feel freaky and can disturb people. Even if when I'm thinking about it in my mind, it looks totally goofy.
But it's one of those like you find one of those, in an alleyway in the middle of the night, probably less goofy.
Yes, 100%. Or in your living room when you turn on the light and you're like, ah. Um,
Yeah,
so
or like
okay, so we're
after this
thinking,
call.
what kingdom are we thinking here? Raven to me feels like an obvious one, but I could be convinced otherwise.
No, I do find myself locking into Raven pretty fast in this one.
Okay, I
It
think
just is
generally
a
whatever
very
your first, yeah, first
it's a very
intuition.
macabre figure,
Okay.
yeah.
I mean, things with
Uh
rigor mortis, that feels like Raven.
yeah.
I could be again. There's a like world where death happens in all the kingdoms, so it's not like you could never have an undead thing in Wolf or whatever. But also, if it's like primary form of existence is being kind of undead, it should probably be in Raven. So we would probably type it as a vampire, maybe as a vampire fighter, a vampire magic user, something like that. Or maybe even thief could be kind of fun.
I was like
Um,
a soul thief.
yeah, because it could be, it kind of depends on. I think that type would depend on like how it functions. Um, like a rank two, maybe rank three. I don't know how strong these are in the context of the mythology.
Um
It's not a rank four or five. It's not like a giant dragon, right?
yeah,
Like
no, it's not quite a boss monster. It's more
yeah.
like
I think boss monsters are rank 4 and 5. I think that's like ultimately our like designation. Like boss monster rank 4, 5, 6. We will have rank 6 units eventually. That's
I
not
feel like
that's
I
a
feel like
spoiler I'm willing to like be public about.
I feel like in my mind I put it somewhere between a two or a three, and probably in conversation with a unit like Abysmal Construct or something.
Okay. Okay.
Like I think modern interpretations sort of follow that like monster movie esque appearance,
Hmm.
where it's like,
Well,
an
here's a
entire
good
conflict
question.
is yeah.
Is it stronger than a human?
Yes.
Okay, so that it's probably gonna it's definitely rank 2 or 3. Is it like if it could like is it as strong as a strong human or is it stronger than a strong human? Because that's the difference. Like that would be the rank 3, rank 2 divide.
Yeah, I think in a one-on-one confrontation, I think it wins every time without any sort of like, you know, magical means or like with any like, dedicated silver bullet type precaution.
Okay, so then it's probably going to be a rank 3. That'd be my guess. Or if it's
No.
a rank 2, it'd be like a rank 2 with heightened power and some kind of downside, which could be really interesting because you could have it as a like sort of quote unquote energy vampire. It could come in and drop -1000s on your own dudes and then give itself
No,
+1000s.
just to stay in its own life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Follow-up question, does it fit in a bread box? These are the
No.
important parameters.
These are the very important parameters. We actually have a 20 questions document that we should put together for how to figure out what a card does. The very first question is, does it fit in a bread box?
Yeah.
That would
I actually
be
do want to touch on human design for a second because you're mentioning
sure.
with the unironic part of the questioning. Um you notice that if you look at the core set, again, I think it's a pretty 50-50 divide between humans and monsters.
Hmm.
At the same time, like what we were saying with like boss, monsters, things like that, often the very top end of any sort of like rank spectrum, fours and fives, I think right now exclusively monsters, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
The humans in the lower
It's
end.
exclusively there's a ghost. There's one ghost. I think well no, that's also a monster. I think Spectre of Death is a ghost monster. I feel pretty sure about that. But yeah. They're like monsters for rank 4 and 5. We will have other designations outside of that. If the question you're asking is, will there ever be a rank 4 or 5 human? Is that what you're asking?
It's sort of
Or
alluding to it, yeah.
okay, it really depends. Um, that is a partially because it's hard to justify a human being as strong as a giant squid, right? Like that's that thematic, like from a immersive standpoint, unless they're like super powered. At which point, it just really depends.
Yeah, I
And
feel like
the
that's one of the more like. Hmm. There you go
the
ahead.
other the other aspect of that is that it's not just from a flavor perspective. It's not just like, does it make sense for because Crimson Avenger can boost herself up to be huge, so she can take out something really big. So it's like not outrageous that a human would be strong enough on their own to take out a huge monster. But the mechanical reason is that you kind of have like a cutoff where humans from rank 1 to rank 3 and then monsters from rank 3 to rank 5 have like very specific mechanical holes that they fill. And there's just things you can do with 1 to 3 rank that you can't do with 3 to 5. Um, Specifically, like for example, if there's a card that says go find a human in your losses pile and return it to your hand. From a rank 1 through 3 perspective, you're getting 1 or 2 skulls from your losses. So that's not a huge differential in that specific ability. But let's say a human had 4 skulls because it was a rank 5. Now that card gets kind of bananas because you're going from possibly like 16 skulls to 12 skulls by just like flipping over a card. And the like cost to that card is relatively low because it's designed for a human. Um, and that kind of throws off like the overall balance of the game in some ways, where you have like one exception to a pretty hard rule. Same with monsters. Like monsters are a little different because you do have monsters who are rank 2, but the design approach for monsters doing things like that with recursion or moving different zones is that generally we approach it like there are rank 5 monsters, so we're going to tune this as if you can use a rank 5 monster in this specific arena. Um, and there will be other things that affect humans that won't affect other cards. So we just have to make sure that we're as a like heuristic for design. If humans are always rank 1, 2, or 3, then we kind of know where the ceiling is all the time. So we can make designs that like do a little bit more with a smaller card, if that makes sense.
I also find that's one of those very fun, almost like secret like flavor function interactions there, where like
Yeah,
it does okay, it serves the heuristic purpose of like actual gameplay mechanics and making sure, X sets down the line, things are within certain appropriate parameters. But even to that effect, there is like a narrative being told in that in all these stories, if a human were to overcome a monster, if a David and Goliath situation were to happen, that's usually through some sort of like ingenuity or preparation as opposed to, raw might.
yeah, right. So then, in the case of Crimson Avenger, unbearing to give her plus 1,000 counters is kind of representative of that. Like, you have to do things in order for her to gain the strength to overcome the giant monster. She's not innately able to do it on her own just by like showing up. And that speaks a lot to like humans as a vessel of potential, and not just a um, like a set uh, bundle of physical attributes, right? Where it's just like it just shows up. It's not like a rhinoceros where you're like, well, anytime a rhinoceros shows up, you're going to get something that's like fairly big and fairly strong. It's like humans are all over the place, right? Like some are small, some are tall, some are really skilled, some are really not very smart. So like you have to represent that in ways that feel authentic, and also with the idea of human potential, it's also like yes, but all of them could be more than what they are, and that's sort of a quality reserved for humans in the game because I think it speaks to a quality about human beings outside of the game. It's like, and here we are, first full circle from what we started our conversation about, where we're talking about ideas and a greater idea like and how it's represented in context of media or gaming. And I think that there's I don't know, I'm really a fan of that it's we're not just designing humans because we are human and we see ourselves in these games and we want to be able to represent ourselves in this way. It's also like there is a through line of commonality between the way that the card works as a human and the way that humans exist in the world. And maybe there's something philosophically or um, uh, metaphorically true about how they work that resonates with us. And I think that resonance is really important in design. I think that's like the key of designing successful immersive games is like finding a resonance in how you represent something mechanically and visually, and people will latch onto that and feel something while they're playing, as opposed to just like going through the game.
I thought that was pretty good. I don't really have a follow up.
Okay.
I was sort of sitting here like, no, he's kind of got it.
Well, maybe then that's the place where we can end it for today, and then we can pick up another time. But Eric, as always, it's a huge pleasure to talk to you. I love having conversation. I feel like you and I, again, we could talk for hours. As we were recording this, Jarrett also posted something in our playtest chat, and he just wrote that we could, if all of us got on to Fable Talk all at once, we could all have a 5 hour long conversation, and that definitely feels true.
It's true. Ooh, I think a Fable Talk Summit way down the line would be fun.
Yes, absolutely,
I'm taking.
absolutely.
I will. I'm gonna call it now musical chair style as a representative of the Wolf Kingdom.
Oh, musical chairs would be a fun card too. Also, that would be.
Oh,
Um,
one unit's gonna get either sidelined or lost if it can't
yeah,
get
I
cut.
mean, listen, there's lots of ways to play that card to make that work. But you just inspired me. I might start putting some stuff in the card ideas channel.
Folks, you never know what's gonna become a card.
You never know, and honestly, sometimes the stuff that seems the simplest and the most obvious is the stuff that makes the best cards. So, but on that note, we will see everybody next week. Thanks for listening, and Eric, thank you for being here. Yeah, that's it for today. So
Bye,
have a
everyone.
great day. Bye.